So history is a rapidly evolving field which has a rich history filled with many advancements and improvements that have made it what we know of it today. In my audience analysis questionnaire, many of you answered that you had a limited experience with the medical field and of the history of surgery. However, many of you also expressed that you had a very deep interest in learning about a specific period in history. I have conducted many hours of research over the course of a few years, not just for this project, of course, into the history of medicine with a particular focus on the history of surgery. I am also a health occupation student here in my local career tech program, and we've been learning quite a bit about medicine and healthcare with regard to surgery in some sections. So through this presentation, I will take you through primitive surgery, the mid-1800s, through the late 1800s, through the mid-1900s, and then from the later part of the mid-1900s through the modern day. So here we have depicted the ancient times, and during ancient times we had a very primitive understanding of surgery. A lot of times the only surgery that was performed were amputations or trepanations, and amputations were a lot of times conducted to prevent severe blood loss, even though it was a very, very painful process because anesthetics had not really been put into use just yet. Here we see a surgeon working on a gladiator of some description, which would be part of ancient surgeries. A lot of times Colosseums would hire on surgeons to take care of the gladiators. When we moved into the medieval time, the Renaissance, that period, we had a little bit more understanding. Dissections, so we could understand anatomy, were a little more common, but we still didn't have a concrete understanding of the human body. So surgery was still fairly simple. We have a surgeon removing a bullet, which is using this instrument here. It was used to extract bullets from limbs after war. As we moved later on into the pre-anesthesia part of the 19th century and later on following the 18th century and the Renaissance, we still saw a majority of the time, because anesthetics weren't available yet, patients would often kick and flail and have to be held down. Surgery still wasn't quite to where it is today, but more procedures were able to take place because of our increasing knowledge of the human body and what systems affected each other. Now, following the introduction of mass anesthesia, when it became more common, surgery was allowed to branch out more. More procedures were invented, some of them were improved, surgeons could take more time, and with the influx of understanding of germ theory, asepsis, which is preventing infection in the surgical theater and in healthcare, were becoming the norm. Then moving forward into the early 20th century, we saw an improvement in cleanliness. More procedures were invented and a lot of times just generally improved due to the increasing knowledge with each passing year. And this was really the golden era of surgery following the late 19th century. Now moving into the mid-20th century, things started to sort of level off. There was obviously lots of procedures being conducted. Some of them were invented. A lot of the procedures we conduct today were created during this time, including the early 20th century. Here we see the trephination, which I mentioned earlier, but instead of being used to relieve mental illness or release demons, I believe this procedure was to relieve brain cancer. I believe that was what this image was depicting. Then moving on to the late 20th century and modern day, there's a lot more focus on laparoscopic surgery, which means that surgeons are going in through small tubes with smaller instruments and a camera to light the area that they're working on so that they don't have to open up the area and create a bigger wound. So here we see the modern surgical garb, which is very much covered, very tight, lots of lights, sterile gloves. Sterile meaning it's completely free from fungi, bacteria, viruses. So this entire area is incredibly clean, as opposed to, say, the ancient day when it was dirty instruments and things being used from one patient to another with a very limited understanding of the human body. Now we know vastly more than we knew previously. So now we would no longer hear such a sound like that. Really, in short, there really have been a lot of improvements in surgery. Surgery is a field of improvement and advancement that has really made it what we know of as today. So we went through primitive surgery through the mid-1800s. We covered the late 1800s through the mid-1900s. And then once we finished off there, we were able to cover the late 1900s into the modern day. Now, you can sally forth with your new knowledge in surgery and hopefully know a little bit more about the healthcare that you're being provided.